In 2022, the Chiefs had two first-round draft picks. They took a corner and an edge, Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. In 2026, the Chiefs stay on the defensive. This edition of Defending the Kingdom, like them all, is brought to you by Ticketmaster after an exciting round one of the 2026 draft.
Mahomes in the pocket, he'll step up, he'll scramble 10, 5, Mahomes, diving, touchdown, Kansas City.
Hi everyone, I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, along with Chiefs senior team reporter Matt McMullen. It's only fitting that we're in the defensive meeting room with Emmett Thomas behind us, the former All-Pro Football Hall of Fame corner. So we're in the defensive room tonight, and why not? After an exciting first round, the Chiefs get two defenders, but a really impactful move for Brett Veach to move up from 9 to 6 and grab Mansoor Delane, who is considered to be the best corner in this draft.
Yeah, we got the best corner in the draft tonight, and that's pretty exciting. We've talked a lot about how the Chiefs aren't normally in this position to be taking a player in the top 10. And you look at past years, we've done a great job of maximizing value or finding ways to get players that are maybe under-scouted in later rounds. I think we'll do a great job of that as the draft goes on. But we have not been in a position to take the best corner in the draft, according to everyone's rankings and projections and everything, in a very long time. And we got that guy here tonight. It's super exciting. I mean, look at Mansoor Delane last year. He was a unanimous All-American at LSU. He recorded 13 passes defensed and 2 interceptions while allowing just 14 catches. It's always tough with corners because they might not have a ton of volume stats because they're just not getting targets their way. Mansoor Delane is that kind of guy. Just people didn't throw at him. He was out there for 357 coverage snaps, allowed just 14 catches, and had 13 passes defensed, and did all of that despite battling like a core muscle injury throughout the entire year. Only missed one game because of it, though, and still became a unanimous All-American. So we'll talk all about him, but this guy is awesome. And my favorite note on him, 0 penalties committed last year and 0 touchdowns allowed. That'll work.
Yeah, and think about the teams that LSU played.
Yeah.
So it tells you he was up against some high-caliber players. When you look at the numbers even further, he allowed the third fewest yards of any corner in FBS football. They had 35 targets against them. A 26% completion rate against him, and the quarterback rating against him was 27.5. These are elite numbers. And then you look at his ball skills, 8 career interceptions. So that includes 6 that he had at Virginia Tech before he got to LSU. It's his length. He busted a 4.38 40 at LSU's Pro Day. When you look at also his toughness, Brett Veach talked about him, but this guy checks all the boxes. And you look at his run grade, and overall his Pro Football Focus grade, third among all defensive backs in this 2026 class, or actually in FBS football last year. So the fact that he is just an immediate day one, game one, snap one impact player is very exciting.
Yeah, it is. And that's what you do when you trade into the top 6 to get a guy. You believe that he can be an all-pro caliber corner. And Brett Veach talked a little bit tonight about why the Chiefs felt like they had to trade up. So what's interesting is we think about the draft process and how obviously the Chiefs are grinding on all of these players. They want to know everything they possibly can about all of these prospects. But it's more than that. They're also spending so much time trying to figure out what everyone else is going to do because that dictates the players that are going to be available to you. And the Chiefs have an awesome analytics team, and they've been running predictive models for weeks and weeks trying to say, hey, what are the teams ahead of us going to do? What are the most likely players that they're going to select? And Brett explained that the reason the Chiefs felt like they had to trade up to 6 overall is because they thought the Saints were going to take Mansoor Delane. And they identified Mansoor weeks ago as the guy that made the most sense for them. They weren't going to get into the top 3 and get one of those guys, but Delane was a top 5 caliber player on their board, and they think they had a chance to go in and get him in this draft, but the Saints were the biggest obstacle. So what do? You go get your guy, and we saw that transpire here tonight. And, man, adding a player like this to our secondary, which is kind of undergoing a bit of a makeover right now, is just super exciting.
The other thing that was interesting in Brett Veach's comments after the draft in round 1, you have to have a trade partner to do these trades. So this, something you can kind of create fantasies if you wish. But they knew Cleveland wanted to trade out of that pick. They knew that they had a shot, and Cleveland ends up getting Spencer Fano, who's a guy that they were targeting on the offensive line, and they need offensive linemen. So it was doing the due diligence, but then also keeping it somewhat clandestine. I think Brett Veach is a little bit proud of this and the fact that he did not. This is it shouldn't have been under the radar, but it was. You and I talked about Mansoor Delane, 6 weeks ago, but the fact that they didn't make a big splash that they wanted him necessarily, but they wanted him. And the targeting him at 6, it just worked out perfectly in the scenario.
Well, that's the gamesmanship of this time of year. So Brett in his press conference was laughing about the fact that so many people said, hey, the Chiefs are targeting an offensive lineman in the top 10. We didn't say this publicly, but when we saw that, we're like, we're not taking an offensive lineman in the top 10. Like, you have a chance at getting an all-pro caliber player at a position of need. You do it. You don't take an offensive lineman. And I just thought it was hilarious how Brett was laughing about that, because that's clear misdirection. You put that stuff out there and people run with it, and you never know how it might influence other teams. Also, we canceled Mansoor's top 30 visit because we didn't want all the feelers to go up and everyone to say Delane had a visit with the Chiefs. Like, the whole idea is the Chiefs aren't very interested in Delane, and what do you know? He's been the guy for like 4 weeks. So there's so much gamesmanship going on this time of year. I'm glad we got our guy.
It's only fitting. I'm sitting here with Emmett Thomas over your shoulder, who was a Pro Football Hall of Fame corner at a Bishop College. That school's not even there anymore. But when you look at what one scout said, and actually was quoting LSU's defensive coaches, good worker, tough as
bleep.
Yeah, word that begins with S. And he brings energy, was good for the young players, good guys, and young guys. So the fact that he fits all the measurables, but and this goes back to the 22 class, which I love so much, the mental and emotional maturity and leadership. And he had it at Virginia Tech. Like, he had good years at Virginia Tech before he had his final year at LSU. So we're going to talk to him. It's going to be, I look forward to it because this is a guy, again, that is ready to jump right in and help the Chiefs get back to where they want to be defensively.
And he plays the run as well, which we always talk about is a prerequisite for Spags. The reality is a lot of corners out there don't want to play the run. They don't think they get paid to play the run. They're out there to cover and to make interceptions and all that. But to play in Spags' scheme as a corner, you got to play the run. And we've had great run defenders at corner over the years. Trent McDuffie was an excellent run defender. You have to have a willingness to play the run as a corner. You can't just be good at it. You have to want to do it. And that's Mansoor Delane, a great run defender and a willing tackler throughout his time at Virginia Tech and LSU. And I didn't know this, but Brett mentioned it at his press conference. Delane was a wrestler as a kid. So we talk all about Creed Humphrey and these high school wrestlers and how it translates to playing offensive line. I guess it translates to playing corner as well.
Leverage, footwork. But when I remember I texted you a while back, I go, man, Mansoor Delane, and then we watched his video. But you talk about tackling. 54 tackles in his second year at Virginia Tech. In his third year at Virginia Tech, 54 tackles. In his year at LSU, 45 tackles. 191 tackles in 4 years for Mansoor Delane. That is music to the ears of Steve Spagnuolo and the defensive staff. That wasn't the only defensive player taken.
Can I have one more thing?
Yes, sir.
I mentioned this on the live stream if you watched that, but I have to give Mitch some props here because we get together with our guy, Austin Woodard, who makes Mitch's binder on all the draft prospects. We got with Austin in early March?
Yeah.
Like early March, maybe, late February, just kind of putting this all together, kind of turning the page for us from last season to the draft process. And we all brought in a player that we really liked, like our favorite player in the class. And Mitch's favorite player, the first player he mentioned in this meeting was Mansoor Delane. And now we get to meet him tomorrow, and he's a Chief. How about that?
His video, man, you had me at hello.
Yep.
When I turned on that video, I'm like, oh, my gosh, this guy is a Spags player. He's a Chiefs corner. And you get a Pat Surtain, and that a compliment because I love Pat Surtain, although he's a Bronco, but you get that kind of caliber player at corner, which we've built corners, but you get a first-round corner like this, you get real excited. Then, with the 29th pick, the Chiefs stayed home and stayed at 29. Some thought that they could possibly trade up, but they stayed there. And to get Peter Woods out of Clemson. And, again, you have to watch the tape and what he did there. But the fact that this is a guy that also had some big markers. Willing tackler. He's got a one-gap and a two-gap ability, meaning he's not afraid to play two-gap, which is the dirty work. We saw Derek Nottie do that for years. But he's also a potential one-gap penetrator. He had 14.5 career tackles for a loss including 8.5 in 2024. His 24 tape especially is really impressive. But Peter Woods gives you a lot and some multiplicity of virtue or skills inside, whether you're going to play him in an inside gap or maybe push him outside.
Yeah, he's a really interesting and unique blend of size, explosiveness, and athleticism that's hard to find, especially at the back end of the first round. Played a lot of different spots at Clemson, so he's versatile, to your point. A lot of interior defensive tackle work, obviously, like you laid out, but also played some over the nose, also played some edge in 2024 specifically. So he can play really all over the defensive front. And Steve Spagnuolo obviously will love that because he loves the versatility in his defensive lineman. Kind of in a way reminds me a lot of Tershawn Wharton and how Spags used him. I think Peter Woods can kind of fill that role. Turk Wharton was a really good player for this team for 4 years, and we've kind of missed that in the time since. I think if you look at last season, where last season the struggles kind of came from, the interior defensive line is one of those areas because beyond Chris Jones, we just didn't have a lot there. I mean, Omar Norman-Lott flashed some things early in the season, but he got hurt super early. We had to bring Mike Pennell back in order just to kind of survive the rest of the year. Well, look at what we have now. We have Chris Jones. Omar Norman-Lott should be back hopefully this season and back early on playing well. Kairos Tonga is a guy that we're really excited about in free agency. And then Peter Woods in this mix. That's a really good group, and I'm fired up about it. I mean, Peter Woods, if you go back at the beginning of the 2025 season, he was a potential number 1 overall pick. I look at Jordan Reed, who does great stuff for ESPN. He had Woods back in August as the number 1 player on his board. Now, the season didn't go necessarily the way Woods thought it would in terms of the stats and the numbers, but the talent is definitely there, and Joe Cullen's the perfect guy to kind of unlock him on this defensive line.
The other fun fact about Peter Woods is he played 15 defense, or he had 8 carries for 15 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
So Dontari Poe might be back. That goes
Let's
back.
Bring it back.
Hell yeah. And so that in you look at that now, you're looking at a two-way player, but he had 2 touchdowns playing fullback at the goal line. So that gets to be kind of fun.
Hungry pig, right?
Hungry pig. And if he passes one, that'll be really crazy. But this guy's an athlete. And when you look at 6'2", 302, and he can move. So he had a hamstring problem in March of 26. But, again, this is a guy that – and people go, what about edge? What about edge? Reuben Bain Jr. falls to 15. Zion Young at the end of the first round was still there. Couple things here. You can still take an edge in the draft. But if you have inside guys like you mentioned, like Kairos Tonga, Peter Woods, Chris Jones can move outside.
Yeah.
And Chris Jones now sometimes can play some of your edge, which he did. Remember the 2022 sack against Joe Burrow in the 2022 AFC Championship game. But there again is when you have guys with this skill set, you can do some mixing and matching, which is like what Steve Spagnuolo likes to do.
And we're just getting started. We have the 40th overall pick on Friday night. Edge is definitely still in the conversation and in the discussion for that 40th overall pick because there's a lot of solid edge players still on the board. We talked about this going into the draft, that the strength of this draft in a lot of ways was edge, not necessarily at the very top, but throughout and really in this middle range. So I think the Chiefs are going to have an opportunity to add an edge if they want to. But to your point, we don't just add an edge and everything's magically fixed. I mean, earlier I mentioned how the interior of the defensive line just was really light last year. We didn't have a lot of depth there, didn't have a lot of production there, and we needed to get better there. I think we've gotten a lot better there this offseason and got better there tonight. Also at corner, I mean, the reality is Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie are both on the LA Rams now. So not only do we have to try to find a way to replace that production, we have to get younger and better at that position. And we're excited about Noel Williams. He really showed some things last year. I think Christian Fulton was really impressive when he was healthy finally at the end of the year. And adding Mansoor Delane in the secondary is going to make it that much better. So if the interior of your defensive line is improved, your secondary in a way is improved. I know we lost McDuffie, lost Watson, but Mansoor Delane adding an all-pro caliber player there is a big deal. That helps your pass rush in the long run. And again, we're not done. There's still plenty of work to do.
If you want to go on some retreat and just get away and listen to podcasts, snap together the podcasts that we have had, if you binged them, all set together ever since the end of the season, and you kind of see what happened on round 1 of this draft. Because this was cooperation, this was preparation, this was having a plan and working the plan. and it looked like it worked to perfection.
Yeah.
And so it's why the Chiefs have won consistently. And this just is an A grade, in my opinion, with these two guys, but specifically to pull off the Mansoor Delane thing is a bit of a coup.
And we talked over the last several weeks about how the Chiefs really utilized free agency to put them in a position to take the best player available in the draft. Well, if we had not utilized free agency the way that we had, we wouldn't have been in a spot to take Mansoor Delane at number 6 overall. And, you know, when the season ended, I think there was a lot of buzz about Jeremiah Love. Mm-hmm. Understandably so. He's the best running back by far in the draft, and the Chiefs had a clear hole at running back. Well, Jeremiah Love went number 3 overall. If we were coming into tonight hoping Jeremiah Love would fall to us or fall into a range we could trade into, we'd all be leaving disappointed. Brett Veach didn't mess around. He went out and got Ken Walker and said, okay, we're going to take the best player on the board. We're not going to mortgage the future, mortgage our entire draft class to get to number 3 or just hope he falls to us. We're going to take care of that in free agency and take the best player on our board when we can, and they did that here tonight.
Also got Amari DiMercato, who I'm kind of fired up about.
Yeah.
But we're fired up about these two guys. The Chiefs add to the roster Mansoor Delane out of LSU, and prior to that, Virginia Tech. And then Peter Woods, a really good, versatile inside defender on the defensive line.